You ever stop and wonder, why did I just do that? It's a huge question, right? So, in this explainer, we're going to dig into some of the hidden psychological reasons behind our behavior. Getting a handle on these quirks, that's the key to figuring out ourselves and, everyone else around us.
Yeah, that is the big question. Over the next few minutes, we're going to unpack some really powerful psychological facts, things that kind of reveal the hidden scripts that are running our lives, a lot of the time without us even noticing. So, let's dive in.
Okay, first up, let's talk about our brains. They're always trying to save energy. And to do that, they create these little mental shortcuts, what psychologists call cognitive biases. Now, they're not really flaws. It's just the mind's way of being efficient. But, and this is a big but, sometimes that drive for efficiency can totally lead us down the wrong path.
I mean, think about this for a second. Your friend comes to you with a problem, and the solution is just crystal clear. It's so obvious. You can lay out this perfect, step-by-step, rational plan for them. But when you're the one facing that exact same issue, suddenly everything's a tangled, emotional mess, right? Well, there's actually a name for that. It's called Solomon's paradox. It's this funny thing where we're like these wise sages for everybody else, but we just can't see the path for ourselves. But here's the cool thing. There's a powerful trick to get around it. It's called a self-distancing strategy. All you have to do is imagine your problem is happening to a friend. What advice would you give them? Just that little shift in perspective, boom. It can unlock all the clarity you've been looking for. Oh, you've totally seen this happen. Maybe at a holiday dinner or something. Someone starts rambling on about a topic, totally convinced they're an expert. But to everyone else in the room, it is just painfully obvious. They have absolutely no idea what they're talking about.
Yep, that is the Dunning-Kruger effect in action. It's a cognitive bias where folks with low ability in a certain area completely overestimate how good they are. And here's the really wild part. The very lack of knowledge that makes them incompetent is the same thing that stops them from realizing they're incompetent. They literally don't know enough to know that they don't know anything. It's a real catch-22.
Okay, so here's another classic one. It's called the fundamental attribution error. This is what happens when we blame other people's actions on who they are as a person, but we blame our own actions on the situation. So like someone cuts you off in traffic. Your first thought is, what a jerk. But when you do it, oh, well, I'm late for a really important meeting. See? We see them as a bad person, but we just see ourselves as having a bad day. Have you ever seen a friend buy the latest gadget right after some slick ad campaign and thought to yourself, wow, they really fell for that? But we kind of believe that we're way too smart, way too savvy to be persuaded by those same ads. But are we really immune? This little blind spot is called the third-person effect. It means we're experts at seeing how media affects other people, but we totally deny how much it influences us. But the truth is, like it or not, all those thousands of messages we see every single day, they are absolutely subconsciously shaping our moods, what we want, and even our attitudes.
All right, so we've looked at the brain's mental shortcuts. Now let's get a little deeper. Let's talk about some of the really surprising, almost counterintuitive ways our brains are physically wired.
You know that feeling when you get rejected? It's not just in your head, is it? It feels real, like physically real. Well, it turns out there's a very specific reason for that intense punch-in-the-gut feeling. It's because rejection literally hurts. Yeah, neuroscientists have found that the exact same parts of your brain light up when you feel socially rejected as when you, say, break a bone. Your brain is processing that emotional pain the same way it would physical pain. And that's why it feels so incredibly, intensely real. Okay, this next one is going to sound kind of weird. You'd probably think that trying to make a decision in a foreign language would just cloud your judgment, right? Well, it turns out the exact opposite is true. See, to think in another language, your brain has to work to suppress your native tongue. And that same mental muscle you use for that also tamps down on your gut reactions and your emotional biases. This allows for more logical, more rational choices to pop up. Ever find yourself just stuck, endlessly scrolling on your phone, and you can't stop? Yeah, you can thank something called the dopamine loop for that. So dopamine isn't really the pleasure chemical people think it is. It's more of a seeking chemical. When you're scrolling, your brain releases that little hit of dopamine not for what you actually find, but for the act of searching. And that creates this insane loop where you're just driven to seek more and more and more without ever really feeling satisfied. All right, for anyone who is always told to stop daydreaming in class, this one's for you. It turns out that your mind wandering off isn't a sign of a lack of focus. It can actually be a sign of a super efficient brain. See, people with higher IQs and more creativity, they tend to daydream more often because their brains just have extra horsepower. They can totally tune out of a simple task, go explore some other cool ideas, and then just seamlessly tune right back in without missing anything important.
So, okay, we've got these mental shortcuts, we've got these strange brain connections, but how does all this stuff actually shape our lives? Let's kind of zoom out now and look at the psychology of our life stories, our memories, even the pets we choose. You ever notice how older people tend to tell the best stories, and they're almost always from when they were in their late teens or early 20s? Well, that's a real thing. It's called the reminiscence bump. And it happens because that period of our life is just jam-packed with these super emotionally intense firsts. You know, your first love, your first real job, moving out of the house. These experiences are so crucial to figuring out who we are that they get burned into our memory, becoming the most vivid, easy-to-recall stories we have.
So, this next question is a little provocative, but hear me out. Could it be that we choose dogs that are kind of an extension of ourselves? Research actually suggests there's something to it. I mean, we tend to pick partners who have similar traits to us, right? Well, we might be doing the same thing with our pets. Some studies have found that people who score higher on things like hospitality and aggression are more likely to own dog breeds that are, stereotypically seen as more aggressive.
All right, you want a simple recipe for a longer, happier life? Here it is. Help other people. Yeah, research consistently shows that people who volunteer on a regular basis tend to live longer than people who don't. And the why is really cool. Psychologists think it's this powerful one-two punch. Giving back boosts our sense of purpose, and at the same time, it fights off loneliness by building strong social connections. And those two things, they're key ingredients for a long life. Okay, so it's really important to add a quick note here, just to be scientifically honest. As the source material points out, a lot of these super fascinating studies were done with pretty small groups of people. So they give us these incredible little windows into how we work, but they're really just a starting point for understanding the huge, mysterious world of the human mind.
So, now that you know all this as you go about your day, here's the question. Which one of these quirks are you going to notice first? Are you going to catch yourself doing that fundamental attribution error thing in traffic? Or maybe you'll see Solomon's paradox in action when a friend asks for advice. Because the most fascinating psychology lab in the world, well, it's all around you, and it's inside you too.